the book, they're actually updating every year now.
Are they?
And they're not publishing a book anymore. So you actually have to get them online and then print them out yourself. So we've been printing out some for our inspectors and binding them and putting them in the truck.
Okay. So can I get a motion on that?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to adopt the state standards.
I will second that motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. That is a recommendation to the city council. Okay, unfinished business. Land development code amendment with regards to duplexes in and outside of the UGA. Permit timelines and short subdivisions to be constructed. It's a lot to swallow in one sentence.
So Devin, this has come back in front of us specifically regarding the process that we need to go through, correct? That
So we are at timeline.
the application that you filled out was very thorough, and it just looks like that we need to walk the procedures for code amendments.
I think you guys need to set your public hearing.
Right, that's what I'm seeing on.
Lost my timeline.
Yeah, it looks like we're ready to go to public hearing
Yeah.
based on the application,
Right.
right? Because all the stuff that we talked about last meeting is referenced in.
Yes.
And then I talked to Todd, and he had one suggestion about the urban growth area, changing that to the 9,000 square feet. Because he said that unless most cities in their urban growth area goes by the county standards, like we don't review anything that's built in the urban growth area unless we have an interlocal with them. And I'm not sure that, I haven't had a chance to look to see if we do or not. I've always just heard that if it's in our urban growth area, they go by our standards. Was all I've ever heard. So I don't know if we have an interlocal with them or not, that we can go by our inside city limit standards. Or if it's just by, because it's an urban growth area, it goes by the county standards.
The county standards being 9,000.
I don't
I'm
know.
not sure.
I don't know what their standard is. Yeah.
So
So I don't know if that part should go in there, since I'm not positive on
You want to hold that back until we find out? I think we
that'd
could
be good
move.
to know. Maybe
Yeah.
We've kind of made a mistake on this once already. So maybe it's right the second time. So Todd is suggesting 9,000, which is in
I don't
it.
think,
Taking the urban growth areas
Out.
out of it.
entirely.
Yeah.
because I don't
Yeah.
think Todd is suggesting that 9,000 square feet is it. I think he's thinking the jurisdiction of what is buildable out there falls under the county.
Yeah.
Because we have an interlocutor with the county so that we actually,
Yeah, and from what I understand, if we had an interlocal with the county, then we can set standards for the urban growth area. But I'm thinking we don't, because they usually don't notify us if a house is being built in the urban growth area. So I'm assuming that we don't have
But
one.
have we had a house built in the urban growth area?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
on Monden Road, that's our urban
Oh,
growth area.
gotcha. Now I understand.
And when new house,
Yes.
I think there was one that went in there and we didn't know. We didn't have a review on it or anything.
Okay.
But county.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, okay, it sounds like we need to find that answer out.
If we don't have one, maybe we should find out.
Well, yeah, what are the advantages? I mean, are there some advantages of having an interlocal agreement with the county versus not?
I guess we would be able to set the standards for it.
Yeah,
Well,
conceptually, as
so-
much because it's part of the UGA, it's going to become part of the city. We should have it be part of the city.
Right, I mean, because especially these two developments that are, underway, I mean, it seems to be going through city process.
Cowlitz Meadows is inside city limits.
Inside city
Yes.
limits, but the second one
they're wanting to annex in.
They are?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
So
All right,
those ones would go by our standards anyway.
anyway. All right, now I understand. Okay, now I understand.
Well, I would prefer to know because I agree with Brian. I think that if
Yeah,
the intent is to at one point in time become part of the city, we want input as to what was being done.
Yeah.
How do we say
So,
Well, I think we're tabling this.
yeah, so I'm gonna start sending Todd our agendas for planning commission that way. So he will probably be at the next one if you want to table this and get his input on it.
that? Thanks.
Well, either that or input beforehand.
Yeah.
It doesn't, I mean, I think we're at the point where we're trusting of his judgment.
Yeah.
What would be a good place to research the UGA regs matching the city that they are growing out of? Need to look at what box.
And the one thing I noted here on the checklist for amendment, on the fill out, submit the amendment application, you wanted 2 site maps, minimum size 8.5 by 11, maximum 17 by 11. And I thought we had discussed that, but we actually want, in addition to that, we'd like that on CD, electronic files at the minimum, but we'd also like 2 full-size sets.
Yeah, I remember that now. What?
Well, that was at one of the pre-meetings, we requested that of Cowles Meadows.
Well, I thought that was during the council meeting, but I'd like to amend that to
Yes.
2 full-size sets and electronic files.
Yeah, we can do that.
Did I hear that Calis Meadows is inside city limits?
Yes.
And not in UGA?
It is city limits.
Okay.
Well, okay, so
So we should still go
Is there-
through this.
well, is there any reason why we can't set a public hearing date and do some of this in parallel? I mean, if it really is just.
Yeah, you can, I guess you can, and just take out the urban growth area part of the duplex.
Well, I was wondering if we could strike that at a later date, once we find out for sure, but prior to the public hearing.
Yeah, that's my suggestion. It seems kind of silly to kick this another month and then set a public hearing.
Yeah,
Okay.
so just ask Todd. and-
Or we have a workshop within the next week or 10 days and get Todd's input and modify it then.
Yeah,
That's the other option, I suppose.
yeah.
So we could set a hearing date if we committed to getting the work done before the hearing.
More of that, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, so next week I'll be at a conference. So that only gives, I'm sure not very much time.
Right. Well, but it really is. All right, so what do we need to know? We need to know whether or not we have an interlocal agreement with the county. We're hunching that no, we don't.
Yeah,
And if the answer is no to that, then we pull
the urban growth.
the
part.
early growth, so. dang,
You would still change, like separate out the duplex part from the single family, because it's at 4,000 and make it its own section. But you just eliminate that, having the urban growth, a duplex in the urban growth area, 9,000 square feet.
So I would propose that we set up a public hearing date. And modify what we present based on whatever we find out in the next, it sounds like this is a fairly quick thing to find out.
I would think so, yeah.
that we move forward with public hearing. And we have just some verbiage changes prior to that, based on what Devin finds out. Unfortunately.
I agree.
Okay.
So workshop would be sooner than public.
I don't think we need a workshop. I
Or
think it's
whatever.
based on, I think, if
Is
the
it
answer is
gonna be a yes
no,
or no?
yeah, if the answer is yes, okay, so well, we're really assuming it's no. But if the answer is yes, then we keep the UGA 9,000 square foot stipulation. If the answer is no, it's full.
Just, yeah, just take off that part. And you're
I
okay
don't think
with
we
the
need
rest.
I don't need a workshop.
I think it's just an email from Devin saying this is the answer.
Okay.
Totally.
Okay. So do we want to set the public hearing for our next meeting?
That'd probably be the
See why
best,
not?
yeah, the best one.
Okay. Do we need a motion on this? Or is this just,
Do we need a motion on this today? Or an agreement?
I mean, we've already made motions to get it this far.
Yeah.
right? So.
I should know, shouldn't I? I don't think you were, I mean,
the
I think you
agenda
just set the public hearing
Yeah, the
date.
agenda item was specifically to set
Yes.
the meeting date, which we are doing.
Yes.
All right,
Okay, moving along to timelines for permit procedures, which currently are untenable. Have you got that in front of you? You know? Devin, do we have a copy machine real quick?
Yeah.
Maybe make a quick copy for Brian
Timelines.
on this.
This way.
Copy.
Question about the UBA.
Yeah, it is.
Never thought of that, which is.
I was unaware of it. Well, do you want to start with the easiest one first or the hardest one first?
well, I think we're following your guidance, Steve.
Yeah.
Well, let's start at the top with building permits. I believe one is where there is no SEPA determination. And that is currently within 15 days from notice of application. Now, as building permits that require a new water or sewer hookup go before the planning commission, that could actually, 15 days would take place before we actually have a chance to meet again. I'm thinking more like 45 days.
So, a month and a half. So,
Well, if you try to string the dates together at the worst possible scenario, you could actually have almost 40 days to go between application and planning meeting, which would give you a very short time period to actually take a look at them and make a recommendation.
so you're proposing to do that, turn that 15 into 45.
I am,
And we're talking about the SEPA determination date.
yes.
Okay.
Makes sense to me.
Yep.
I don't really see a problem with the SEPA determination issue. It's within 120 days of completed application. Because a completed application should have the completed SEPA survey in it. Am I wrong, Mayor?
I'm not sure.
I believe that, I think that's one thing on hold with the big project, is the fact that their SEPA application has not been finished. And, now you're gonna have to have it go before the planning commission, then it's gonna have to go before the city council on recommendation, so that then you could sit in a situation, because the city council is gonna make the determination, not us.
Right.
So, but I'm not sure that we couldn't do that within 120 days. 4 months, because the time, the clock stops every time we have a question and we send it back.
Right.
So, unless you have any suggestions on,
I think that's pretty common, that 120.
I think it is too.
And I think you're right, that complete application means that you've got your traffic study, your wetland report, or your geotech, and if for some reason it's not there, you can request it.
And the clock stops.
Right.
Okay, the short subdivisions. And we have determined those to be anything 9 lots or less. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Yeah, 1 to 4, right?
1
1 to 9, sorry.
Yeah.
I think we still fall into the same category here, is that the time given currently isn't sufficient to get it before commission and make a recommendation.
But it would be okay, it would fall under a 45-day cycle.
I think it would. No, that's just for the plat, right?
That is, well, it's not clear here, but yes, that would be my assumption.
Because there's no evidence, there's no indication whether, the short subdivision, depending on the location, can still require a SEPA determination. And so I'm thinking that we do the same thing we did with the building permits, is we make it 45 days if there's no SEPA and 120 days if there is.
Yeah. That also makes sense.
Boundary line adjustments. I'm still falling within the 45-day situation. That has to get before planning.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Now, variance permits, they don't go before the planning commission, they go before the council.
Correct.
So that's not something that we would address. And the same to be with conditional use permits go before council.
Correct.
Subdivisions. If we're going to start doing development agreements, there's going to be a lot of back and forth negotiation even after that, because we're not going to actually entertain a development agreement until such time as their application is determined to be complete. And there's going to be some negotiations going back and forth between the parties with regards to how certain items within the SEPA document are going to be mitigated. I think 90 days is horrifically low. I think that we would be far better off to extend that to 120 days, if not 150 days. What are you finding as a standard on the subdivision? Because I remember them taking forever.
Yeah, and I don't remember off the top of my head, 120 sounds familiar, anywhere from 120 to 180. Is what's coming to my mind. Todd does a lot more of the process
Yeah,
things than I
the
do.
forward plan.
Exactly. I usually work with, hey, we need this reviewed by X.
And I'm still understanding correctly that in a subdivision situation, if there are things missing from the application, the clock gets reset or just stops?
Clock stops.
Just stops, okay. Well, the 120 seems like a minimum. So, question is how much we ask for? Reasonably.
Yeah, my recollection on subdivisions, and I've been through about, 400 or 500 of them, was typically it was 150 to 180 days. And I mean, I would be willing to do 150. I think 20 is cutting it short.
Agreed.
Yeah, that seems like a fair.
That is strong for 150 days.
Hey, why does it take so long?
There are so many moving parts on that.
Like, so you got 9 houses that want to go in a subdivision, and you're going to take each one up to 120 days to discuss individual things that might be wrong, or through the SEPA? Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, the SEPA determination is the big one to make sure that everything is mitigated and taken care of.
Right.
Generally with subdivisions, you've already crossed that hurdle, or you should be crossing that hurdle. The negotiations that take place between the city and the developer take place, and those can be extended before you issue conditions of approval for the subdivision. And everybody walks away happily smiling that they got what they wanted.
But it still has to go between the planning commission, and it's got to go to the council for approval.
And you're gonna have, are you gonna hold public hearings on that?
I don't know, I'm just asking
Yeah, I think you are.
Yeah, I believe there are public
for the
hearings.
subdivision,
Yeah,
So.
or any division, any development. I gotta go.
Not from 9 to, not 1 through 9, but over 9. Yeah, I think you're gonna hold a public hearing on
I'll
that.
have to.
And so if you take negotiations, you take public hearings, and if you end up having to go back to it in the second public hearing, I mean, the problem is it doesn't have to take you 150 days. It doesn't have to take you 180 days to come to a determination or to issue the plat. What it does is it keeps you from getting stuck behind the 8 ball with a legal limit on what time you have to have it done. And you don't want to put yourself in that position because you lose your negotiating leverage. And,
Okay,
We lose it on our end,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying.
It gets rushed to
Yeah.
the group.
Yeah,
but, okay, so I'm confused, this is the first time I've heard of the clock stopping, so, is it the 120, 150 days semi-arbitrary if the clock stops? Or what does that mean?
I think this line is if the clock never stopped.
Right.
There's a certain number of things that have to happen.
Yeah.
And 90 days is way too short to pull that off.
And then, so when the clock stops, it starts when the X factor stops the clock?
Well,
Is it just-
if there's a particular reason to send it back to the developer
Right.
or an issue change,
Yeah.
then the clock stops. When he returns it to you satisfactorily, the clock starts again. So he's got some onus that he can
Absolutely.
rely on.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you don't want to be put in a position where you're approving something because it's,
No.
you're being up against the wall.
No. Yeah, so, yeah, I say 150, 180.
And Mayor, nothing prevents you from doing it sooner.
Right.
okay.
So do we agree on 150 days?
I heard there was if there's a 180 option, why not take that? I mean, if
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
like, because if it can be done sooner, and if lock stops, why not just give us the most leverages that we can?
Okay.
If there's a standard of 180 up there, we can stop on that.
Now, in this particular document, it says that SEPA requires longer time. That feels a little mushy to me. Is that just a note to us? That-
Yeah, I was trying to keep it somewhat short.
Yeah, so under the subdivision timeline, it says preliminary plat issued within 90 days, and then underneath, it says SEPA requires longer time. It's not called out specifically as it is in the building permits.
Well,
So,
I'm not sure that we would issue a determination of completeness without the SEPA document already being
gotcha.
submitted.
Okay, great. As long as that's clear, then I just wasn't sure what that note was. So, okay.
And then the last one is a city council issue, it's final plat issue within 10 days after the city council meeting, so.
Right.
Okay.
No, that's gonna be something the city council has to approve.
The final plat.
No, this change in the.
Yes,
changes
yes,
of
this got kicked to us to come up with recommendations
Okay,
to take back to city
Okay.
council. So
so can I hear a motion based on everything that you said?
I think I can attempt to do that again.
Okay.
All right, I make a motion regarding timelines for permit procedures to change building permits and the SEPA determination from 15 days to 45 days, and keeping the 120 days to completed application. In regards to short subdivision, changing from 28 days to 45 days, and adding a SEPA stipulation and set that at 128 days. Regarding boundary line adjustments, changing that from 28 days to 45 days. And for subdivision preliminary plats issued, changing from 90 days to 180 days.
I hear a second.
I second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes.
Duplex, short divisions. Oh, yeah, we have short subdivisions and new construction.
Short subdivisions, new construction.
So that's duplexes. So changing the city clerk.
Devin, is this, the blue highlighted stuff is the stuff that's been added?
All that stuff that's changing, you need to refer to the application, handwritten pieces in the application. So changing the city clerk treasurer approving or disapproving the completed application to the planning commission.
Right.
And then adding a new section regarding new construction permits for the water sewer connection, that it be reviewed by the planning commission before being approved by the city clerk. I think those are the two.
I think those were the two that we had talked about.
Yes. So I make a motion that the text amendments in this amendment application move forward to city council approval.
I second that.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I'm a little confused on is this permit application applicant's intent.
I think that came about in regards to when folks were submitting an application to plat, say, 3 lots out of 2 or 5 lots out of 3, based on our new regulations on lots, minimum lot size. And there was some question is that we would like to know what the applicant's intent is for that land before we approve the short plan.
You wanted something added to that.
Yes,
Right.
so that,
Which I
it's all
I
coming
haven't
back to me
gotten
now.
to yet,
Okay, so,
but I didn't want to lose it, so I left it on there.
Okay, so we don't need to really. revisit
Yeah,
this.
yeah, once I get the wording done, then I will give you guys copies of the application so you can make sure it's okay.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and I think that I don't think we need to just, and that doesn't need to go in front of council.
No.
Okay, so I think we all under agreement that we want something on those applications of what the intended purpose
Yeah,
is.
kind of why are you doing this?
If we can do that in the email, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
That completes unfinished business. Other business, the Lewis County Plan Growth Committee meeting information. I think Nora was our representative. And unfortunately, she can't be here, so we'll have to wait to get feedback on that. And item 2 is a review process for subdivisions. Which I probably just handled.
Well, no, I think maybe the wording is wrong. Is this my request about Todd's concerns about planning commission members being,
Thanks.
that's, I know, yeah.
I think it was,
So,
yes. Oh, here it is. Yeah.
yeah. I think everyone was copied on that, but Todd had some concerns about Steve and I being involved in some of the preliminary meetings with the Red Rock folks and I can't remember those.
I thought we'd all agree that was a good idea.
Well, so did we.
We did.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand Todd's concern is that with, 2 of the 5 planning commission people being in the weeds with
Sure.
the process, biases our decision-making capacities. However, in this particular case, or us moving into, big boys and girls worlds of subdivisions, Steve's expertise in these early stages is paramount. I mean, I think it's far more important for him to be in these early meetings than during the decision-making process. So I guess my suggestion would be that I remove myself from those meetings, because that gives us at least a clean quorum during the decision-making process. So,
And subsequently, then I would recuse myself from voting on the application.
Of what you have expertise over.
unless there's a tie,
Yeah,
unless there's a tie. And if there is a tie in any sort of voting, then Steve would have to cast a vote.
I am not really sure. I mean, in the interest of, bottom line is we're trying to do a thorough job as we can for the city to make sure that things are done properly. And using the expertise of the people that you have on hand seems obvious. Todd seems to believe that having participation in the process then sours your ability to, and I'm not sure what. I mean,
Yeah.
you have the most information. I mean, if you're going to be involved in the process and you share that information with other members
Right.
of the planning commission, what is the objection?
I kind of disagree that there would be a bias. I think that maybe that would be sketchy to do if you were to go to that thing and then you saw us in the bar and talking about it. That's like we can't do
We can't
already.
do that anymore.
Yeah, so I don't see a bias, and quite frankly, there's a lot of details that I'm sure you'd be able to pick up on, and not only inquire in that meeting at the Bedrocks, but also talk about here with all of us to inform us to make the best decision. So
That's my opinion on it, but I'm not the attorney.
Well, and the other,
to your point, I think we are also getting into the big boy and girl realm of subdivision, so
Right.
that might just be the legalistic things we got to do, but.
right, well, the other piece to this is that, having at least Steve in these early meetings is that it also, if it gets to a decision point and one of us brings up something that wasn't discussed before, then that stops everything and, there's, you have to start again.
Right.
So if a lot of those things are taken care of along the way, then, it's a much more streamlined process, in my opinion. But again, I have no issue with me stepping aside and at least making sure that we have a quorum of, uninfluenced decision makers.
Sure.
So that feels clean or cleanish to me.
Do you have an opinion on this?
I mean, I understand Todd's perspective. When you do get into some of the more, say, controversial land use decisions, whether they're subdivision or otherwise,
Right.
there is a risk if you're the quasi judicial body who's taking evidence, testimony, reviewing it, and making a determination based upon the record in front of you. And that record is the application, the testimony from the applicant, the testimony from the public, and then you're making your decision based upon that. And you're, from a legal standpoint, you're not supposed to be bringing in other information that you have garnered from some other source. The developer pulled you aside over here and said, hey, really, I'm trying to do this type thing. And so it's partly trying to maintain.
That would be sketchy.
It would be, but I mean, but it's the same thing if somebody else, whether it's a developer or somebody else is pulling you aside and lobbying you on something.
Sure. The pulling aside.
That can create an appearance of bias, whether there is or not.
Right.
And so when you get into some of these more contentious ones, and then somebody appeals because they don't like the decision, then that can create a risk if one of the decision makers has been involved in the process outside of when they were legally supposed to.
Is the risk a lawsuit?
Yeah.
Well, then I agree with it.
So do you think we
That's
think
what
we
it
could
is.
handle it that way where I would recuse myself?
I think so. Again, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm an engineer. I'm not.
I-
I believe that's the way
Not an attorney. but-
I understood it from Todd, like with Eric on council being in them, when it came to voting, he should more than likely recuse himself because he's been at all the meetings.
I'm just gonna say, it still benefits the town, and benefits the council and the planning commission if you are there, Steve.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, I think that's very clear.
yeah.
I agree with Brian, because like if I had a subdivision article here in front of me, and I don't know what a couple of those sentences are,
Sure.
I'll say, here, Steve, take a look at this. You've been through a lot of them. Is this guy blowing smoke or is he legit? He would have the answer for me to acknowledge with his expertise. Like my dad said many years ago, if you need somebody to fix electrical problem or plumbing problem or carpenter, you go get the guy that does it. Right? He's been there, he's done that. So we're all new to this. I'm new to the subdivision stuff, but we are gonna grow people and it's gonna be faster than we think.
Right.
And we gotta get all this, our ducks in a row.
And I
Because we don't want to face any problems down the line, and if he has expertise with something he caught, hey, they can't do this, brings it to everybody else's attention and we stop it,
Mhm.
clock stops, we start over again, whatever the case may be.
But that can be done before it ever approaches the planning commission.
It could, yes, it could.
And you only recuse yourself from the vote, not from the discussion, correct?
That's a good question.
Well, I think I would have a problem bringing up information that's not within the documents presented to the planning.
Sure.
Now, if I'm participating in the development of those documents by being involved with the planning, then all that information should be in front of you anyway. Okay, that would be my job. That's part of my job, would be to make sure that you have all the information.
Yeah.
So if it's not, I have to give you a school outside of class, then I haven't done my job.
Mhm.
And that's not my intent.
Yeah.
So I would be more than happy to recuse myself and make sure that the information provided to the rest of the commission is complete.
Okay. I mean, it sounds like we have our bases covered, and it sounds like we won't get sued. So,
Or less likely.
less likely.
There's the error.
Never is 0%.
Okay. Well, I'm perfectly comfortable with that.
Okay.
I don't think we have to make a motion on
No.
That was a
that.
discussion.
Okay, well, that is other business. Public input? Sir.
Yes. I asked a couple of questions of the front office and they suggested that they were better answered in the venue of the planning commission. I am extremely hard of hearing and only get about 5 to 10% of what is said. So I need pretty direct ability to read lips and so forth. Mr. Mayor, your voice is very pleasant and mellifluous, but it's in the absolute middle of the range so that I cannot hear. My questions were in regard to whether or not living within a commercial zone is permitted, accepted, or encouraged by the town of Toledo. That's the first of the questions. I know some cities say we do not want people living in commercial zones, and they restrict that very, very rigidly.
It's funny you should say that because that's a conversation I had with one of our business owners earlier, because I believe that Second Street used to be all commercial, was it not at one time? And then it slowly became residential. And we've narrowed down the commercial zoning to a very small part of downtown. I am not aware of an ordinance that we have that prevents living within a commercial zone.
Well, it makes sense given much of the current atmosphere, certainly with COVID, working at home and trying to reduce commute times and commute distances and so forth, to actually, I believe, encourage people to live as close to work as they can. So if I were to build a commercial building, I also would be permitted to reside there.
Isn't that the current situation with Donna's establishment, that she has upstairs apartments?
Yes, that's true.
I don't know that there would be a prohibition against
You would have separate hookups.
separate hookups.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
ma'am, I missed that.
There would be separate hookups for the commercial versus the residential portion.
Okay, and what at the present time do those hookups cost?
A lot.
9,000.
$9,000.
Say it again, please.
$9,000.
For water and sewer.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
so it'll be 18,000 if I
Correct.
were to do both.
Now, there is an option that you can pay over time, correct? Is that still in play?
Yeah, we do.
So you can actually pay for those hookups over, is it a nine-year period? 10-year period? That's written someplace. Devin can get that
Over
answer
some.
right. Yeah, so
some
you could
additional
either pay up front, or you can break those costs over a period of time.
Okay. I guess my third question is perhaps more addressed to city council or whatever. I've lived part-time in some of the towns in the southwest where the use of golf carts has been encouraged within the 25-mile-an-hour area. And I wondered if Toledo had any possibilities of
The mayor can answer that question.
As long as they are
equipped.
licensed, windshield, headlights, blinkers, all that, like a normal, like a little Jeep or whatever. I don't see no issue with it,
Okay.
because we already adopted, we're gonna put up
That's a county
four-wheeler
level,
signs.
yeah, it's a county level thing at this point.
The county's okayed us to put up four-wheeler signs, but they gotta have all the apparatus, the license, the lights, taillights, brake lights, headlights, windshield, all that's gotta be, and then they can run down the
Is
streets.
there a permissible?
Yes,
Okay, and that's a county ordinance rather than the city ordinance?
that's through the county and the city has adopted that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
I have one more item to throw out there, and it's only a question that has been asked to me by a couple of the business owners along the main drag here, and I made a phone call to the State Department of Transportation to get further info. Has the city ever considered changing the flashing yellow lights out there to flashing red?
not to my knowledge, Dave, it's always been,
Any considerations on doing so?
What's-
The complaints I got from the people that I talked to were the trucks coming down the hill that are, the reasoning behind it was that if the trucks knew they had to stop at that red light, they'd be going a lot slower when they came off that hill than they presently do. And the people, mainly what I see, logging trucks that believe it's 50-mile-an-hour zone until they hit the end of the bridge. And then they use between the end of the bridge and the flashing yellow light to get down to the 25-mile-an-hour zone. And if they knew they had to stop, perhaps that would ease the situation. Not to mention the pedestrian traffic, which we have used flags before to try to get them across safely.
that doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. So I know there are a number of state highways that do have signalization. I know the State Department of Transportation is actually responsible for operating and maintaining that flashing yellow light.
Yep.
I placed a call to the State Department of Transportation to get further information on what it would take if we decided to change that to a flashing red. But I believe that would be something that would have to go before council, not before planning commission, obviously.
I believe before you joined the council, there was some talk about either speed limit change or light, I don't know if it was a light change, and it seemed like the DOT will only do it if there have been accidents there.
That's what I heard.
Well, another thing,
And I would be pleased to be proactive and doing something that would prevent an accident from happening. However, I am not the DOT.
Well, I will get further information and forward.
well, they're gonna come back and tell you that they put the delineation out there on all sides of those tubulars to slow traffic down. Well, let me tell you folks, that didn't work either. And we put up a speed limit flashing thing, to tell you how fast your speed is. That doesn't work very well either. We've had officers sit there and clock people, which to some people coming out of the post office one day, I said, God, that guy's speed. I went right over and talked to John Brockner. I said, how fast are you going? He said, 23.
Yeah, the
So
trucks
the
look-
The bigger the truck, the faster
I
it
know,
looks.
but your exception is, your vision is going faster than what you actually think they're doing because they're not actually speeding. And John said, I can't pull them over for doing 23 when they're illegal. But yes, you're right. On the other side of the bridge, the speed limit starts at 25, not here at this end. I've told numerous people that, look at your speed limits, curve back on the other side of the bridge. And also, your speed limit increases on the other side of the bridge, not to do 40 here.
That's not the
40 on the
takeoff
other.
line.
Yeah, let's punch it when you get on the bridge. No, that's not the case. Don't do that. Until you reach the sign, then you can proceed to punching in or whatever you want to do. Anyway, the yellow caution light has been there for a long time. They were wanting to take it out. The state was. Because of the low maintenance.
If I can get an ear, are you opposed to me furthering my investigation?
No, it does, but if it'll help slow down, I'm all for it.
All right. Any other business? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I was second.
I'll say it.